Thanks for tuning in, guys. The Pest and Lawn Ginja, and today we're going to go over my lawn leveling project. This year I've made a number of changes to my front and backyard, and one of the major changes was I put in a concrete border. Now I wanted the concrete border to solve a few problems. One of it is to make the mowing more pleasurable and easier. It allows me to go from using a weed whacker to a border edger, and my weed whacker was really beating up my plastic fence, taking gouges out of it. Now it'll also give me the opportunity to put some decorative materials around the perimeter of the fence to make it a little bit more pleasurable to look at as well. One of the problems that I've known that I've had for a long time, but was exposed by putting the border perimeter edge in, is I have about a 5-inch slope 6 feet out along this entire border perimeter. Now I've already put sand on my lawn several times, and I was only able to bump the level up about 2 inches, but it still leaves me with this horrendous gap. Now, just like most of you guys out there, I love a good quality mow job. So we're gonna solve this problem by looking you viewers at home and taking your advice. Hey Ginja, why don't you use a sod cutter and put soil underneath it and make it all better? So you know what, guys? That's exactly what we're gonna do today to solve this problem. Now, I'm really excited to try this out. I've got the grass in a really good state, and I wanted to see what I could do to get the leveling done with causing the least stress to the grass, so I don't have to start from scratch and have to reseed. Now I'm on a big time crunch. It's been 95 plus degrees for about 3 weeks now. No signs of it letting off. So I hired a few of my friends I've been dealing with for the last decade to help a Ginja out. Now we started by taking a sod cutter. We cut through the line all the way across because this is where I had the majority of the sloping issues. The rest of it is fairly flat, and I'm not looking to get 100% flat. You name one golf course green out there that is 100% flat, you're gonna come up pretty short. Now I know this process looks easy, but there's a lot more to it. I think you're gonna be surprised. Now step number one is obviously using the sod cutter and cutting out the sod, but I gotta be honest with you, there is a certain technique, and if you're not used to being behind a sod cutter, it can be very, very frustrating. We chose to put the sod cutter at the lowest setting, which gives us a cut of about 3.5 to 4 inches below the soil. Now we chose to do this to minimize the damage that we're causing to the roots of the grass, so when we put the sod back, it'll have an easier time to recover.
I don't know how to say this politely, but you're a murderer.
Murder?
Yeah, man.
Why?
You completely murdered this worm. Right here, look at this. You completely murdered that worm.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It's completely dead.
It's cut in half, man.
Oh, that is so ew. How does it make you feel to be a murderer?
Feels so good.
Feels good? What is wrong with you?
Yeah, feels good. Because now your lawn is gonna be better.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but worms regenerate. You just created 2 worms. You're no murderer. You can't be happy about that.
Can't be happy with that.
So for this project, we're going to use screened topsoil. We want to make sure it's screened, no gravel, no rocks, just to make sure that the roots will take really nicely and that we're not going to have problems in the future. But these guys are doing a fantastic job getting it up. I'm hoping to get roll back my sleeves and get a little dirty with them. I love supporting my local businesses, and we found this soil at a local nursery. Now, it was called a premium soil, and what that means is it was a screened topsoil mixed with sand. It doesn't get much better than that. Now, cost-wise, it was a little expensive. They do it per scoop. It turned out to be about $25 per scoop or $50 per yard, and that wasn't including delivery. Now, to estimate how much soil I needed, I ended up using a calculator called a cubic yard calculator, and I put a link in the description of the video in case you guys need it. Now, my area length is about 45 feet. I know I'm gonna be somewhere between 5 and 6 feet of area that need help, and on average, I'm gonna need to raise the height about 3 inches. Yeah, the cubic yard calculator calculated I need about 2.5 total yards of dirt, and I was being fairly liberal in my estimate. So we ended up ordering 3 cubic yards because we can always use the extra dirt in the flower beds and the creases along the border perimeter edge. We went through about 13 wheelbarrows of dirt and started spreading it out, and that leads us on to the next step, which is compacting the soil and using a tamper. Now I prefer to use a tamper because it's square and I can really see how level the soil is. I can adjust how hard I push into the soil, and I can really see how much dirt that we need to add later. Although it can be time consuming as opposed to renting a roller, I find the tamper's a little bit more useful, and I'd rather get the job done right the first time rather than have to rip everything up and redo it.
So this is round number 2. You can see that I really, once it's compacted, you don't have as much dirt as you quite would hope that you have. And we're still about 2 inches off. I dare say I kind of think that we're probably going to go through all 3 yards of the topsoil that we bought, which kind of shocks me. I was guesstimating about 2 yards, 2.5 max, but it was really that low.
Now that we've got the levels to where they need to be, that leads us to step number 5, which is leveling the dirt out. Now there is a very handy tool out there called a Levelawn. Now this tool is very handy in the fact that it helps push dirt up and through some grates and leaves you with a silky smooth surface. Now I'll have a link to the description of the video of the Levelawn that I chose to use for this project, but it saves you a ton of time if you have enough money to purchase the device. Now it's pretty simple to use. You're just going to push it along the surface of the soil, and when you watch the dirt in the middle of the grates, if it dips, then I add some more dirt to that surface. But for the most part, we're just pushing the high spots off of the low spots. Now I prefer to do a horizontal pass, and then after I get that smoothed out, I prefer to do a vertical pass so I get the leveling done in both directions. Now oftentimes you can see on this last pass it ends up being like a roller coaster. Now running a vertical pass off of the horizontal pass helps eliminate and avoid those vertical passes. Now if you end up having some roller coastering going on, you're going to need to use the tamper and put some more dirt in its place and recompact. Now if you do this process correctly, you're going to have a seamless transition to our next step, which step number 6 is replacing the sod.
Oh, it's just about seamless, bro.
Now I must say it was a pleasure working with Emiliano from Quality Custom Landscaping, because with his experience it made it so we didn't have a huge margin of error in our seams right off the bat. This was take number 1 and we nailed it. It was practically a seamless transition, which when you're dealing with sod there is going to be a certain amount of seam to it, because you've cut it and you've put it back together, and when you get it wet the dirt is going to fall. Now my suggestion is to create the seam a 1/4 inch higher, with the new sod being at the high point, so that way when you do have some sloughing downward it's going to be seamless. Now this job is no joke. There were 2 professionals and myself on this job. Hopefully I didn't slow them down, but I'd like to think I sped them up a little bit, but it still took us 3 hours to get this done right. One of the common questions I get all the time is, hey Ginja, can you do this while it's hot outside? Well, the answer is yes. Today's weather was 95 degrees when we were out there sweating it away and getting the job done right. Step number 7 might surprise you, but we move on to doing a top dress on top of the sod. Now it's improbable for the sod to fit the exact same way that it came out, and it provides these little gaps, and as everything starts getting wet we're going to have a certain amount of sinking. Now since I cut the sod out, I've put a certain amount of stress on the sod, so I don't want to put more than about a 1/4 inch of dirt on top of the grass. Now the next step of the process is pretty simple. I'm going to grab my Levelawn and we're going to do the same leveling technique as we did after we cut the sod out and put this dirt down. Now it's very important that we continually massage the dirt in all directions to make sure that the grass pokes through. Now having the grass poke through just gives us a positive sign that it's all going to work out just fine. And sometimes you got to get your hands on the dirt and kind of knead the grass through the dirt so you can see it and make sure that it's not laying down and suffocating. Now I can tell you from experience, this isn't going to be 100% foolproof. It is not going to be 100% smooth a week or two out, but this is going to make it about 90%, maybe even better. But I can almost guarantee that I'm going to have to do a late fall top dressing or another top dressing early spring next year with a light layer of sand to really get it as smooth as possible.
You can kind of see the lines where the sod was, and this is going to prevent lines. Kentucky bluegrass naturally grows outward, so it'll eventually fill in those spaces, which I'm really excited about. So we're kind of taking it section by section, and we discovered that this area right here, it's too low by about an inch. So we've got to remove the sod that we put down and start the process back over. But ultimately, it's going to be much better than what it was. And this was the worst of the area, was right off of this water box that we had between the city main that comes in and my shutoff valve right there. That's where it dipped the worst. We're gonna have a little bit of dipping right here that I'm gonna fix with dirt, but for the most part we need to raise it up another inch, so we're gonna start that process now. And sometimes you just gotta redo it, but luckily we caught this early, so it's not gonna be that big of a deal.
Oh my gosh, these. Cut these.
We might, that might be the best idea.
I think so.
Okay, cool, let's do it.
Vamos a cortarlo, papá. Espérate, porque vamos a cortarlo.
Shout out to Brett Sucks. Does this job suck? It sucks. But we are slaying the lawn, baby.
Now this kind of project is perfect for you guys out there that have good, decent lawns that you don't want to mess up. Now the idea behind this is we remove the sod and then we're going to take topsoil and raise the soil level. You have to understand that my lawn was literally taking a dip. It was almost 6 inches. Now, previously when I put the sand down on my other leveling videos, if you go back to watch that, the idea behind that was to smooth it out and to raise surface levels. Now, you can only do that so much at a time, usually about 1/2 inch per application, and you could do that every 2 to 3 months if you wanted to be really aggressive about it. Now, since I have my border edge in, my grass is in decent condition, I wanted to speed that process up. So this time, instead of leveling it, we're going to raise the soil, dirt levels, then put the sod back on. Now, the one thing about this is I am disrupting the rooting system of my grass. I used to have shallow roots, but my roots now are chasing 5.5 to 7 inches on average. So we're legitimately cutting off 3 inches of roots in many of these areas. So I'm gonna have a little bit of root stress. So we're gonna have to focus on a good recovery solution. Now, when it comes to recovery options for sodding like this, I'm gonna go with the ProPete 1358 because I put the grass in. Now, I haven't done a fertilizer service for about 4 weeks now. So I'm gonna use the 1358 at 1 pound per 1,000 square feet to make sure that I get a healthy dose of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Now, if you guys bought sod from a sod farm and you're doing this process, you need to call the sod farm to make sure that they didn't already pump the sod full of fertilizer, which is a common practice. Now, to aid the fertilizer in the recovery, we're gonna use Essential Plus 101. Now, it's got items in it like vitamin B, calcium, L-aminos, and sea kelp and humic acid in it that really help aid in the recovery process, and I swear by it. It works so well, it's ridiculous. Now I anticipate that this grass is gonna look good as new within about 4 weeks time. Some of the areas are gonna turn out to be a little bit pitted only because of the fact that I'm gonna have a little bit of that dirt sloughing. Some of the lines of the sod aren't going to come together, which brings me to my next point. I'm gonna put down a selective pre-emergent so it doesn't allow weed seeds to germinate. Now I'm gonna use Tenacity. You can use anything between Dithiopyr, Prodiamine. Just remember though, when you put that down, you're not going to be able to seed, but if I put the Tenacity down, I'll be able to seed at any time. So that's why I'm using Tenacity.
3 weeks later, it is looking fantastic, and I attribute it to the recovery service and also the Tenacity. You'll notice it's 80% recovered and we're weed free, which is awesome. Now, while it is true I have a lot of pitted areas, I was expecting this to happen. Legitimately, it takes Kentucky bluegrass to grow laterally and to get these lines to disappear, but I feel like I'm well on my way.
Man, I am all ears. I'm gonna end up getting the best mow of my life. Things are much more level, a lot more smooth, and in the end, it's gonna make mowing that much better. But guys, this brings us to the end of slaying my lawn. This is my lawn, and this is the Pest and Lawn Ginja. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, hit me up below in the comments. You know I'd love to help you guys out. Until the next time, guys,